Lamont and Frances Waldrip dedicated 42 years of superior, sustained service in helping to achieve Cal Farley's dream, providing a boy with a shirt tail to hang to. They served in nearly every position at the ranch, in one form or another, from house parents, teachers, administrators, librarian, program director, ranch superintendent, and board member. They worked directly with Mr. Farley for 12 years before he died in '67. The journey in the life of Lamont and Frances Waldrip began in 1953 on a Canyon school bus when the college-age bus driver and a high school band member got acquainted. They married in April of '55 and moved to Boys Ranch in August of the same year. Many people have asked Frances why she moved to the ranch, and she always answered, "Because my husband got a job there." The couple moved into a two-room apartment where the chapel now stands. Lamont began his teaching assignments and a house parent job. Then Uncle Sam called in Lamont's deferment, and he was drafted into the Army 1 month later. Frances moved back home with her folks and enrolled in WT. Lamont got ready to leave with a bus ticket in hand for Fort Ord, California. However, he didn't pass the physical because of an injury he had received as a child from his brother Roger. After a phone call back to the ranch, he was told that his teaching job had been filled, but they could use him in some other capacity. They became house parents at Hadacall. At Thanksgiving of that same year, '55, they moved to the new unit around the Big Hill, later named Seaton and Ailes. Bev joined the family in 1956 and Cam joined in '58. There wasn't any insurance or retirement, and Lamont's starting salary was a whopping $200 a month. So the couple decided that Frances would go back to school, driving 110 miles each class day. They moved into Vigo when it was completed, and later moved to Edwards. Lyndall came along in '62, followed by Justin in '66. Frances completed her BS degree in business education in 1964, and finally began to receive a salary in '65 as an elementary school teacher. She earned a Master's of Education in '71 and her library certification in '76. For more than 30 years, Lamont was the director of the rodeo, and Frances kept the riding times. They traveled with the Honor Patrol, Frances driving the boys in the old station wagon, and Lamont hauling the horses in a truck. Jerry Nicholson spoke fondly of those long trips as a special time of bonding and getting to know the Waldrips. Lamont became the area supervisor and a house parent trainer during the '60s. Later, Lamont became program director, and in 1976, upon the retirement of Robert Wilson, he was chosen to be the ranch superintendent. In 1989, Girlstown became part of the Boys Ranch family, and Lamont took the task of combining the campuses. They made many trips between the campuses. Keeping up with correspondence became a two-person job. Frances would read to Lamont as he drove. Then he dictated and Frances wrote. Lamont's secretary, Ellen Price, then completed the correspondence back home. Many policies and procedures were completed this way on the road. Lamont served many years on the Boys Ranch School Board. He served on the State Board for Child Care Standards. 42 years of service, and that was just prior to retirement. The Waldrips directly touched literally thousands of children's lives. It is probably safe to say that there's not a person here who has not been positively impacted by the life of Lamont and Frances Waldrip. Some of you may have never met them, but you've been touched by them. One of Lamont's successors, and also one of the boys raised by them, Tom Novak, wrote, "They were fair, firm, and consistent, always setting high expectations. From the time they moved to the ranch as house parents and teachers to the time they retired as administrator and teacher librarian, they were a significant influence on literally thousands of young people. Mr. Waldrip was a teacher, a mentor, and a steady leader for an ever-changing environment at Cal Farley's." Roy Dormeyer, who was a student there and then came back as a house parent, wrote, "I lived with Mr. and Mrs. Waldrip for the better part of 8 years. We moved from Seton Hall to Vigo and then my last dorm, Edwards. I can't begin to tell you how much those two people meant to me. They were like my second parents. Sure, Mr. Waldrip always handled the discipline, but Mrs. Waldrip was always in the background with a hug and a shoulder to cry on. I was assigned to Mrs. Waldrip's table at the dining hall and stayed at that table my whole time at the ranch. She wouldn't let you sit at her table without talking about your day at school, sports, your friends, home. She could always get you to talk to her." Robert Solano wrote, When I went to the ranch, Mr. Waldrip was, I believe, the ranch administrator. My peers seemed to look at him as the head person in charge. His presence was everywhere, it seemed, at the dining hall, during meals, sporting events, even out in the alfalfa fields when we were bucking hay or moving irrigation. As boys, we often referred to him as the Lord, and no disrespect was intended, not for religion or for him. He appeared to us as an omniscient person that knew everyone and knew everything. One of the things that most impressed me about him was that during my 4 years at the ranch, he always managed to know what I was doing and how I was doing. Another impressive trait was the way he carried himself. He was to me an example of how a man should carry himself. Many years later, when I retired from the Marine Corps after 20 years of service, he attended my retirement ceremony in North Carolina. In our first conversation, he once again seemed to know what I had been up to for the previous 20 years. Another one of his successors, Mike Pacino, wrote, "When I first met Lamont Waldrip, Gene Heyman introduced me to this very sharply dressed, distinguished-looking man. Business suit, gray felt cowboy hat, and boots. After finding out that he was in complete charge of Boys Ranch and the 2 campuses of Girlstown, I was immediately amazed at his humble nature. I learned quickly that the extremely high standards of work and conduct on the ranch were Lamont's standards. He held everyone to those standards, and we all benefited personally and professionally from them. I was very impressed with Lamont's ability to manage every department on Boys Ranch and the Girlstown campuses. He knew everything about everything. He was respected by all and feared by those who should have been fearful. But with all of his responsibilities, he also cared about every employee and their family. Upon his retirement, he assured me that the ranch needed dedicated people to stay with it, and regardless of the change, to always remember to put the kids first." After 42 years of complete devotion and service to Cal Farley's, half of those as superintendent of Boys Ranch, the Waldrips moved into retirement. They moved to Canyon, where they became volunteers. They became drivers of the Cancer Society, and for Meals on Wheels, they became more avid West Texas A&M sports fans. They became active in senior activities at the First Baptist Church, and Lamont took a part-time job with Brooks Funeral Home. They had more time to visit and support their grandchildren. Lamont became an advisory member of the board of directors for Cal Farley's, and they became more active in the Masonic Lodge and Order of the Eastern Star, becoming 50-year members. The Waldrips never did really retire from Cal Farley's. They quit drawing a paycheck, but they always parented us. They always set the example for us. They have been strong supporters of the work of the Alumni Association, being certain all family members are founding legacy partners. Frances continues to run the Old Timers Breakfast and keep us all posted on what's going on with former ranchers and staff. She always seems to be the one who knows. One of the truly remarkable achievements of Lamont and Frances has been the successful raising of 4 children of their own in a cultural aberration that is Cal Farley's. The Waldrip children are living testaments to the remarkable parenting skills of this couple, each of them being responsible, successful, and role models for society. Firm, fair, consistent, knowledgeable, caring, devoted, leaders, mentors, faithful, capable, high standards, keeping the kids first, distinguished. These are words used appropriately in description of both Lamont and Frances Waldrip. We have all been impacted by their lives. It is only fitting that we honor them as distinguished staff in the Cal Farley's Boys Ranch Alumni Association.